Election day is over, but we're still waiting on results in California and across the country.
Yeah, and this morning we're joined by UCLA political science and psychology professor Efrén Pérez for more on some of those pending results. Good morning, sir.
Thank you for being here, Professor Pérez. Our first question for you has to do with Congress. Republicans predicted a red wave, but this morning, control of the House and Senate still hangs in the balance. Why didn't Republicans have the night that many were predicting?
So I think oftentimes there's a difference between what practitioners want people to hear and believe and what we know about the fundamentals of elections. And as far as the fundamentals are concerned, we know that any president that's an incumbent typically loses seats. This shouldn't be a surprise. That should actually be the baseline that we compare against. Now, if we take their words at face value, this whole sort of notion of a wave, I think, if anything, they were lucky enough to eke out a ripple in some ways, because the structure of our electoral system at the national level is such that closest races are very tight, in part because of a lot of the gerrymandered districts, right? These districts are meant to keep incumbents safe. And so part of what you're seeing here is that, yes, they made some gains, but they fell far short of expectations. And I think it's just simply a function of overselling and overinterpreting the data that they had.
And now, Professor, former President Trump says he plans to make a big announcement next week. Many believe it will have to do with a 2024 presidential run. However, we saw that several of the candidates he endorsed did not do well in the midterms. Do you think we could see the same result if he runs for president?
So it's going to be, it's up in the air, right? In some ways, he's a known quantity. But I think the one thing that is going to be utterly different from the first times that he ran is that he essentially provided a model for other Republican candidates to run on. So now he's going to have different competition from individuals that look very close, both in policy and demeanor, to him, right? He sort of let open the can of worms, if you will.
And midterm elections are often seen as a referendum on the sitting president. What are the big takeaways each party can take from this as they prepare for 2024?
The big takeaway is that elections are going to be very hard to win for either side. I mean, I mentioned this whole notion of fundamentals, right? Typically, the losses should have been greater, but there are a lot of things that are working against those losses. One of them is just structural, right? The way that districts have been organized favor incumbents. The economy has actually been one of those issues that was weighing heavily on voters. But you got to remember also that we had things like the Supreme Court come down on the issue of abortion, which has implications not just for women, but for men, anyone who is sort of a family member or thinking of starting a family or not. And so, we've got to think that part of what is happening here is that voters were not narrowly focused on any one issue. I think they took in part, a lot of sort of the decisions and policy actions that have happened in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, a lot to take out of this. Inflation, everybody was talking about, that was the big issue, but it really didn't hurt the Democrats that much. Professor, thanks for joining us. Great information there. We appreciate it.
Thank you.